able to go ahead soon. It's always a wonderful time to meet together, and we're so honored to have you. This is Bishop Gutierrez, and everyone knows you. And he's the 16th Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Pennsylvania, a man who loves the Lord, who loves the church, and loves his priests. And this parish is, we have the window we take care of for his patron saint. So whenever he comes, just make sure the window is clear. So thank you so much, Bishop, for being here. Welcome.
From those from St. Mary's, my middle name is Polycarp. And very few people in the world have that name. I'm a bishop from the 1st century, 2nd century. So it's one of the only churches, and I think it is. I think there's another one. But
we are.
They are. So. And I'd like to thank Leo and Christian for their work. I saw them out there.
And Tate.
And Tate, yes. So thank you. I always... Well, Noah and I have known each other for a while. And this past summer, the Archbishop of Canterbury invited me to accompany him on his Central American visit. You may not know, but I'm president of the International Compass Rose Society. And the Compass Rose Society is... it's very wealthy patrons from the United States, Canada, and Hong Kong who fund the Archbishop of Canterbury's mission throughout the world. It's interesting in the Church of England that they give him sufficient funds within England, but for the rest of the communion, it's very little. And so we have funded them to the tune over the last 12, 13 years of over 25 million. So he'll always take my call. No, but Justin and I have become very close friends, and Suzanne and Caroline have become very close, and so they take off and go with one another when Justin and I are meeting. But we started off in Guatemala, we went to El Salvador, we went to Panama, we're going into Spanish, and Costa Rica. And I want to tell you a little bit about the trip. And I tell people it was heartbreaking, but hopeful. We were in Guatemala, and we spent a lot of time with the migrants who were coming through the Darien Gap. And we tried to go to the Darien Gap, but the cloud cover in the helicopter was too low. But you walk in and you see, and I always say that people in the United States read the gospel differently than people in areas such as the poorest parts of Africa, Latin America, India, Southeast Asia. It's real to many of them. And Matthew 25 in the Sermon on the Mount takes on deeper meaning. But we walked in Guatemala City, and there was a family. It was an interfaith center. And you see the parents who are just exhausted. You see the worry on their faces. And then you see the kids, 2, 3, 6, 9. And there is a sense of bewilderment because they've left everything. They're in this place they do not know, this room, but yet they have the wonder of a child. And to look into their eyes and to know, as Christians, we're not called to do something, we're called to be with them. Because I always say that, Jesus didn't ask us to save them, because all of us have been saved. Jesus didn't ask us to simply help them, but we must do everything. Jesus called us, so evident by the incarnation, to be one with him. And so this is what I was allowed to see and open my hearts throughout the time. And then to go to El Salvador. And I am so deeply blessed by your ministry, because it is so different, because we get into this, again, our I don't like to use the designations of the Cold War, the Cold War, First World, Second World, Third World. But in the United States and other countries, that, we go in and it's just not simply writing a check, because I don't think at the end of time that Jesus is going to say, oh, and you wrote a check. That's nice, but he asked us the questions. Were you with them as I was with you? And what I saw was not only a prophetic voice, the Cristosal, but also a willingness to be fearless for someone else. We're courageous for ourselves, but like Christ, we have to be fearless for someone else. And going to the margins, and that's the only place the church should be, helps erase the margins. Because if we don't, it's like what St. Paul says, we build that dividing wall of hostility. And what is beautiful is that there is a profound sense of dignity that you afford all those you serve. It's not helping, serve. And that's why this is so important, your work. And especially now, especially with the current government, and the willingness to use force, brutality, dehumanize, ostracize, just for power, or to say we have to keep authority or the way things should be. And you put your lives on the line every day. You put the people there are faithful, dedicated servants of Christ, whether they recognize it or not. And so it was a blessing just to sit there. We had the opportunity to listen, Caroline and I, to the stories of 3 siblings. And just the time you let them speak. And it's that profound listening and presence that makes a difference. And it's that light. It's like when Robert Kennedy spoke in 1968 at the University of South Africa. His famous speech where it's like you drop a small ripple in, and that ripple multiplies and becomes forces of change. And so that is what you do. And that's why these faithful people support you. And so whatever we can do as a people, as a church, and as a bishop, we continue to journey with you. And so I'm just profoundly grateful. And I wish we could spend more time together. I know you have to get back. But you are one of many, and this cell keeps growing to make that profound for justice and peace and hope and love when there's a majority of humanity that need it right now. So I want to thank you. And if there's any questions you want to ask me specifically before I turn over, thank you for letting me go first. I have an early visitation in the morning, and I started off early ordaining a priest and then numerous meetings, and I'm an early, I go to bed early, so. So yes. And it's a good day. Dodgers won, I'm a big Dodgers fan.
You were doing so well.
handle the truth. And Texas beat Oklahoma. I'm a Westerner. Our nephew played for Texas, so. Well, it just, as bishop who serves you, it really gives me a sense of hope and joy that this is what we, as the Diocese of Pennsylvania, believe, look like, and are willing to do for our siblings in this world. And this is what the church should be. You know, I always say that, you know, that we always rush by when Jesus prayed that you may be one. And this shows that oneness. Because no matter what people say, and I tell you, I'm an evangelical, but I'm the good kind. We have to proclaim the power, the hope, and love of Jesus Christ. And it's when we live it with our lives that people become fascinated with us and see that we say what we do and not do, we don't say what we do what we say. And you're an example of that. So I love you, I'm grateful for you, and thank you for allowing me to serve you. Can you believe I'll be starting my 10th year in July. I'm like an old bishop. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop.
I love this guy too.
I know.
Did I tell you I took him to London last year to the Compass for Rose Society? He was wearing a top hat. He was with an English accent, and I was like, "What are you?" And he had an umbrella, and I was like,
And I look to pot, you know.
Yeah.
You want to see pictures?
"I have some." So yeah, I'll share it.
Could I just want to, before you go, I want to just tell people a little bit about your visit. Could you?
Oh, please. Yes.
Because I wanted to give you some context. The delegation of the Archbishop of Canterbury, in which Bishop Gutierrez was part of, visited our office after I think an intense day out in the western part of El Salvador, and our office is in San Salvador. And we had invited the delegation to come and meet with survivors of torture and family members of people who had been killed in prison. And we told our staff our office has terrible parking. It's like this parking lot where we play like Tetris to get out of it. And so we didn't want, there to be problems with you having access to the building. And so we told our staff that if there are people who would like to, greet the bishops when they come, they will have a space and everybody's welcome. But also if you would like to go home early, you're welcome to go home early today. And little, I think in El Salvador, the Anglican Church is obviously very small. And people, I don't think that the visit was very announced of the Archbishop, because they didn't know what it was. But once our staff started Googling who was coming, it kind of caught like wildfire, and the entire staff stayed.
It was.
And the Archbishop and Bishop Gutierrez and the ambassador from the United Kingdom spent, 25 minutes just speaking with our team. And the bishops and the ambassador said to our team that you're heroes, that you are doing God's work. And what Bishop Gutierrez said today about being present, about accompanying, nobody expected it in our team. We have about 85 people in this head office. Something they've just felt accompanied that day. They felt, I tried to say it to you in my email to you and thanking Archbishop Justice, but you gave a great gift to our team that day. A team that's often threatened and pressured and feels sometimes fearful, to have that backing, to have your presence that day. And it made those of us who know the Episcopal Church feel very proud that you were there, that you met with our staff, and that you spent the time with the victims, because the victims don't get that time from their own government and the own authorities in the country. So I just wanted you to know how meaningful it was. And I invited you here today. I think I did invite you.
You did.
And
Sam did.
because I know I wanted you to see St. Peter's. This is one of the most successful mission, parish mission groups that I know in the Episcopal Church. They have been with us for over 10 years. They have never missed a year in which they didn't come to Central America or do a fundraiser and be with us. And so I wanted your presence also to be here to let them know how important and supportive you are of them. And I think that that's what you being here. I know you're busy. You have so much. You didn't even. I think you almost answered the same day. You said, I have a little time for that. And I wanted you all to know that the bishop thinks and sees you and knows how important you are. And thank you for making the time.
So how much do you expect to raise tonight?
30,000.
All right. From my funds, I'll add another 10 in.
All right.
And you know, it's a little connection, God Connections, is the president of Cristosal, Mike Angel. He is at St. Michael and All Angels in Albuquerque. So that was the church that raised me to priesthood. Yeah.
Episcopal Church.
Yeah.
It's a small place.
Yeah. It's
Also, look at these Episcopalians. The first pew is empty.
that's my people? Yeah. Oh, he's my people. These are my people. Okay.
I thought you had a speech, Gary.
Oh, do I? I
You
do
have a
after you.
speech.
After you.
After me. Oh, okay. Let me grab a So I guess I already took up a little of my speech time here, so I'm going fast. But I have a lot of stories that I want to tell you all. So Cindy, I asked her just to give me, only when I have 5 minutes left, to give me the 5. But I hope you know, I say this every year, and I want you to actually believe me. This is like an annual pilgrimage for me now to be Phoenixville or St. Peter's. I love coming. I tell my staff that we are always going to come to St. Peter's as long as they invite us. And so I genuinely like being here, being with you all. I feel like family and so grateful for everything you do for us. And having said that, I thought I would start, but I want to talk a little bit about who is Cristosal, which seems redundant, and many of you know that probably better than others. But it's been a question we've been asking ourselves. We just, like 2 weeks ago before our board, we have Roger Jones here, he's a member of our board. We had our board meeting in San Salvador a week or 2 weeks ago, and then previous to that, we had a big strategic planning session with our leadership, our Central American leadership, and we were asking ourselves that, who is Cristosal? What is our identity as an organization? And a little bit asking us that, why do we need to grow? Why should we grow? What is that for? And what we've concluded, and this has been sort of an ongoing reflection, is that Cristosal is a human rights organization. But we are part of being a human rights organization. We are part of a historic movement for human rights. And that means that we as an organization inherit the gifts, the legacies, the contributions, the methodologies, the achievements of generations of human rights defenders and advocates that have come before us. We inherit that. And in this moment, we have a responsibility to use those gifts and build off of them to continue to push progression of greater respect and fulfillment of human rights in our moment. But with the awareness that being part of a historic movement, we have to also be able to deliver to future generations talent, methodology, achievements, historic memory. So in some ways, I don't know if I'm being clear, but it's a sense that our mission is not unique to us, it's not ours alone, it's a historic mission that has been has been pursued and has been advocated for generations. I don't think there's a single human generation that didn't struggle for freedom and dignity and justice. And we come, all of the achievements of the past have been at the backs and the efforts of people who have dreamed of a better world and worked towards it. And we as an organization have an opportunity, a historic moment specific to us, to continue to push that forward, but leave tools for a future generation. So in a sense, what I wanted to say is Cristosal identifies itself as a part of a movement. We are not just an NGO. We see our institution at the service of our mission. We're not concerned that our institution is sustainable forever. We want it to be useful to pursue our mission right now. In the time, with the resources and opportunities that we have, our organization is at the service of our mission, and we do that without fear. That's who we see. That's what we've talked about with our leadership and our staff in Central America, and I think it's important to say that to you, because you all have been such a deep part of that process of building the organization, and I think you as people of faith, people who have supported us as a human rights organization, become part of that historic movement. So the second question I want to talk about, that's kind of the who we are. We're a human rights organization at the service of a historic movement for human rights. We inherit those gifts from and achievements of the past, and we deliver our work to the future. And then we have to ask ourselves, what do we do? In Cristosal, our mandate is to accompany victims of violence and human rights violations. So we help people. We help victims of torture, forced disappearance, extrajudicial killings, massacres from the armed conflict period, people internally displaced by narco-trafficking groups, government, repression, gangs. This is all depressing. But that's what we do. Those are the people we serve. Those are the people we help. They are our victims. So that could be one way of understanding what we do, is that we help people. And we've been recently kind of doing numbers about how many people have we helped. And just for example, in the last 3 years, we've assisted 7,500 people internally displaced by violence in Guatemala, Salvador, and Honduras. Someone asked me, well, how do you bring that to scale? I said, it depends on what you think scale is. We help more people than the governments in those 3 countries. Cristosal has that capacity. But it doesn't stop with helping people. I was in a conversation with one of the lawyers who was in the prosecution against the General Rio Mon, who was the dictator in Guatemala responsible for the genocides. And in the genocide, he was prosecuting the case of genocide against him. And he said to me that someone asked me one time, what's the difference between strategic litigation and just litigation? And he said, the answer is that when it deals with human rights violations, justice for the victims represents the potential for deeper change for all people. And so when Cristosal helps people, we get an outcome for them. We stabilize lives, we save lives, defend freedom. In some cases, we're able to help people who have suffered terrible abuses seek justice. But when they're involved, the victims, when they make the decision to make changes for themselves, they have the great opportunity to make deeper change, social change, structural change for all people. And so that's also important to understand about our work. It gets easy to try and quantify our work and how many people did we give food to. But the more impactful part of our work is the way that we're able to work with victims as they seek justice, and when they seek justice, produce deeper change for the whole of society. I wanted to share kind of 3 stories about how I see that unfolding in our work right now. And the first one, I'm going to start with Guatemala, because it's the Guatemalan flag. We'll jump through the countries here. In Guatemala, I think last year I told you all about the elections that happened at that point. There was a contentious election. A surprising Democratic candidate won, and that victory was defended by indigenous authorities who shut the country down for 100 days, demanding that the president be installed. And so that represented a great opportunity for Guatemala to deepen democracy and to defend justice through a political change. And for Cristosal, it's represented an opportunity as well. One of the things that we've been doing is working directly with the government, with the Minister of the Interior, for example, to investigate criminal structures within the government, within the police, to help them purge them, help the president purge the government of the mafias that have been so corrupt and undermined democratic and fair governance for all people. And we just had a really big victory. This is what I actually wanted to tell you about. Some of our field researchers detected, Bishop Gutierrez talked about the Darien Gap. That's the gap of land between South America and Central America where there are no roads. And so the people fleeing Venezuela mostly have to cross through the jungle using human traffickers. When they get to Guatemala, then what our field researchers found is that there's a massive structure of human trafficking within the police, the Guatemalan police, that prey on Venezuelan migrants from the southern border all the way up to Mexico. Migrants say that it's almost worse to pass through Guatemala than the Darien. They extort, they rape, they use violence to obligate the Venezuelans who are moving to the country to prey on them. So our field researchers were able to investigate pretty thoroughly who the principal responsible police officers were in it, and we presented to the Minister of the Interior our report, and they formed a task force with DHS, INL, and the police inspector in Guatemala, and last week 36 police officers were captured. And there was of doing field research and reporting. There was a high-level meeting between the Guatemalan government and the and the United States government last week, where they made like a big agreement of cooperation, and the Guatemalan government highlighted the dismantling of this trafficking network as one of their big achievements. And the Vice Minister of Justice sent a text message to our director in Guatemala thanking her for the report. So it's one of those examples where seeking to help people being victimized by a trafficking network, we were also able to have a much bigger impact. In another case in Guatemala, our legal teams are accompanying and prosecuting the case of a killing of a gay couple that was massacred by police officers. And we've already had certain success in the process. So in Guatemala, we see opportunity to find entry points to begin to seek justice and to dismantle some of the corrupt criminal structures that have been preying on the most vulnerable people in Guatemala. And so that's a good outcome. In Honduras, I was in Honduras about a month ago, and I had the opportunity to go to the northern part of Honduras, or the city San Pedro Sula, is the industrial capital of Honduras, and just south of it is a city called Choloma. Choloma is one of the more violent cities in the Western Hemisphere from different points in time. And our team is based in San Pedro Sula. Early in the year, received a family from a region of Honduras called Mosquitia. Mosquitia is in the southern part of Honduras on the border with Nicaragua. It's a jungle area. There's no access roads, there's no telephones, there's no internet. It's one of the largest sort of nature reserves in the Isthmus of Central America, and it's the place where the Mosquito indigenous communities live. Mosquito people don't speak Spanish often. They don't look like other Hondurans. They're a very different ethnic identity. And in the beginning of the year, our team in San Pedro Sula received the first family group fleeing Mosquitia. And they're fleeing narco-trafficking groups that have moved into the area and are forcing the indigenous communities off their land using violence. And since then, 20 other families have joined them in the city of Choloma. So when I was there, it was a special opportunity because we were inaugurating a new marketplace. With this group of Mosquito indigenous people, our team, obviously in the emergency phases, helped them get food, helped them get housing, helped their children enroll into school, sort of stabilize the families with the most basic things that they need. But then in the second phase, began to help them think about rebuilding livelihoods. And so these families of the Mosquito indigenous people decided to create a cooperative to sell, like a commercial cooperative. And we made a deal with the mayor of that town. The mayor gave them a plot of land to be able to establish their market. And these 20 families from Mosquitia who had fled narco traffickers then they became in contact with other people from different parts of Honduras who had also become internally displaced fleeing violence and formed an even bigger cooperative. So it's an interesting story because these are people who came to San Pedro Sula with nothing, forced from their homes, their indigenous ancestral lands, which is even worse, fleeing narco trafficking groups, and having been victims of violence, were able to become activists, to be able to become agents in development in their new host communities, creating a market, working in cooperation with the municipal government to develop a new commercial center in the city. So this is one of our aspirations as an organization, is to see that to be able to accompany this transformation of people from victims to what we would call human rights defenders and advocates. And now I'm gonna jump to El Salvador, which I have a little bit bigger story to tell. But I think we started to tell the story last year. Where in El Salvador, there's now been for 2.5 years the imposition of a state of exception. It's an emergency decree in which due process rights are suspended. Police and military are allowed to detain whoever they want, whenever they want. And once people are detained, the government is able to hold them indefinitely in prisons without accusing them of crimes or having trials or even being able to defend themselves. 82,000 Salvadorans have been detained arbitrarily by the Salvadoran government in the last 2.5 years. And this has been celebrated internationally in some ways as a security model because it's produced an outcome in terms of reducing the presence of gangs in the communities, but at the consequence of tens of thousands of innocent people being rounded up and disappeared into prisons. And Cristosal has produced reports that have demonstrated that over 300 people have died as a consequence of torture in prisons in the last 2 years. We've demonstrated an abundant body of evidence about systematic torture. Sadly, even in our most recent report, we brought evidence about 4 children whose mothers were detained when they were pregnant and gave birth while incarcerated, and their children died in custody of the state. And we have advocated internationally and presented evidence that while there has been a security outcome, it's come at the consequences of crimes against humanity. And in this context, there's been an interesting evolution of the victims. And the victims are thousands. When families suffered their first arbitrary detentions, a lot of them said to us that the police made a mistake, but the president will correct it. They went to the Attorney General, they went to the prisons to try and find their relatives, they went to the Human Rights Ombudsman, they went to the Public Defender's Office, and the experience was that they found out that the institutions that were created to protect their rights had been co-opted against them. And that the only option that they had to protect themselves and to try and seek the freedom of their family members was to organize. And so in the course of the last 2 years, we've seen the emergence of now 5 very solid organizations of mothers. Mothers, wives, sometimes sisters, but they're almost entirely women, who are asking for the freedom for the restoration of due process rights, freedom of their innocent family members who have been detained by the Salvadoran state. And to give you an idea of how brave, the amount of courage that takes, Just in the last 4 weeks or so, in different victims organizations that Cristosal supports, four of the leaders have been detained in the state of exception. One family has had to go into exile. Human rights advocacy for people in the communities of El Salvador has a consequence. But nonetheless, the women are persistent and they are every day feel stronger in their own organization. And we were able to work with these groups to come up with an agreement about advocacy. And the agreement is that they were going to ask for just one thing, together and collectively: the right to visit their family members in prison. Which sounds like a small thing, but just imagine what it's like for a family who doesn't know for sure if their family members are alive. These are the poorest of the poor in El Salvador, who every single month bring food, medicine, and clothing to the prisons and have no idea if they are ever delivered to their family members. And so this idea is that we're asking for something that's so basic that if the government refuses it, it will make them look bad. There's no justification for it. And I was I had a closed-door meeting last week in Guatemala with 2 deputy assistant secretaries of state and a sub-director of the USAID, and the victims organizations asked me to bring their request to the United States government that the US government back them in their request to the Salvadoran government to allow them to visit their family members. And I explained to the United States that they need to make, the United States' objective up until now has been to try and pressure the Salvadoran government to lift the state of exception. What the state of exception is a temporary measure is, it doesn't matter anymore, it's all become permanent in the justice system. It's a useless ask. But if you ask the Salvadoran government to let family members visit their incarcerated relatives, it forces them to make transparent an entirely secret prison system that has over 100,000 people detained in it. And so I got a text message on my way here, or actually on my way to the airport in Guatemala, on my way here, from the assistant to the assistant deputy secretary, deputy assistant secretary of state, saying that there's a lot of excitement now in the U.S. government to change the policy objective, and they want to support the victims' request. They want relatives of the victims to come and meet with Congress, and they want to see how they can. They want to have testimonies probably in the coming weeks from victims with other members of the Department of State. So this sounds like a small thing, but to be able to move from being the trauma, the fear of being a victim, family member who was arbitrarily detained in the state of exception in El Salvador, to organizing, to creating collective agreements among multiple groups of victims, and then moving the United States government to change their diplomatic objectives in El Salvador. That's a long path in victim to human rights defender. And that's what I meant at the beginning when I said that helping people is just one part of it. But helping people being agents of change is the bigger picture. And that's the hope that we have. I've talked about difficult issues tonight, right? I've talked about torture, I've talked about detention, extrajudicial killings. But the hope in it all is always the human rights movement. It's the movement of people who look around at the world that they see and dream of something better. And at great odds, at great consequence to themselves at times, do things so that it might be. And that's what it means to be a part of the historic human rights movement. Oftentimes we don't see the big changes that we're pursuing in our own lifetimes even. But we know that our mission is bigger than just one moment. And the Bishop Martin said to me that he doesn't worry about sustainability because the project of the kingdom of heaven is eternal. It's a parallel to what I'm saying about human rights. As long as we have people on the ground, even in the darkest moments, who are dreaming of something better and doing something about it, and they're not alone, we're a community of advocates, we're a community of defenders, then that evolution continues. That movement goes on, and we can deliver the achievements of our times to future generations, and that way human freedom continues to expand. So that's what it means for Cristosal to be part of the historic human rights movement. I wanted you to know those stories, and I've gone on a long time today, because that's what you're supporting, that's what you are all a part of as well. The bishop said it, being present is more important than trying to fix other people's problems, because we are just one community, one movement of people working for something bigger, something better.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so, all right, so we have a little bit of time for a Q&A right now, so if anyone has any questions for Noah, now's the time to ask, or maybe if you hang around afterwards, you might answer them too, then. But does anyone have anything to ask about what was just relayed to you? Okay, yes, Ken.
Well, I have a question. I mean, Noah, we've been talking for years, right, and I love what you're doing. What I'm always concerned about is your safety, your staff's safety. Like it seems like it ebbs and flows, but like, how is that handled, or are you personally, and your staff personally at risk in engaging with the government?
Don't the helicopter story.
No. No, you know what? We constantly assess our risk, and you're right, it ebbs and flows. In El Salvador, we're at more risk. In Honduras, we're implementing new security protocols for our field teams, you know, especially the ones that are doing the protection work with people fleeing narco trafficking groups and things like that. So we've had to adjust some of the, you know, sort of make those operate more clandestinely. In Guatemala, you know, our security situation is better now with the new government. During the previous governments, we've kept a very low profile and tried to be kind of an operator that was kind of helping without having a big public profile. But in El Salvador, we have a huge public profile. Our staff is on television, and our reports are in the news every single day. There was a recent report that was produced by the Inter-American Human Rights Commission on human rights in El Salvador, and it cited Cristosal over 300 times. The evidence that we're building is the primary source of information about human rights abuses in El Salvador. And so, you know, it ebbs and flows. I think right now, Cristosal will operate, you know, with constant harassment, legal and administrative audits and things like that. Probably espionage. I haven't had Pegasus on my phone for over a year, and you know, the massive propaganda machine. Anytime I tweet or someone on our staff tweets, hundreds of responses from trolls online to try and damage the image, the legitimacy of our organization. The government has created a presidential commissioner for human rights whose job is to go around the world, talk with diplomatic missions, the UN, an American Commission, to undermine our work. That's what they tell us. That's what he does. And so they spend a lot of money trying to destroy the credibility of the organization, of our staff members, to undermine our evidence, our reporting. But they have a very difficult time doing this. And that's because of what I just said. Our information is based on the truth of victims, not the truth of a propaganda apparatus machine. And the truth of the victims imposes. That's a phrase that one of my colleagues said to me at the first day when the victims of the human rights, or the Mazote massacre, were giving testimony against the generals who were the high command and the de facto government of the country from 1980 to 1984. The first time in a Salvadoran court, the victims were able to confront the power that was responsible for the killing of their families. And I asked David, who's the lead prosecutor on the case, how it went, and he said the truth of the victims imposes, even on the accused. You can't escape it. And so, and in public polling, for example, when Salvadorans are asked if they support the president, overwhelmingly they say yes. When they're asked if they support the state of exception, overwhelmingly they say yes. But when they're asked about specific human rights issues like torture, arbitrary detention, and killings that are the content of the security policy, we're winning. The overwhelming majority of Salvadorans agree with our positions. And so it is, that's the space where we operate. And the reality of security for us is that the government will not likely shut Cristosal down in the short term. It would look bad. He wouldn't be able, he just went to the UN at the UN General Assembly, and he said, in El Salvador, I don't know why all the people are complaining. There's freedom of expression, freedom of press, freedom of association. There are no journalists being killed or being put into prison. And so he wants to be able to maintain that sort of optics while they're systematically rounding up people in the communities. That's really what's, we're in a position of privilege in terms of security in comparison to community leaders and advocates at the community level. So that's where we're conscious of that, and that's why we've adjusted our programming to be much more movement mentality oriented, to be able to be supportive of those people who are taking risks and who are, like I said a few minutes ago, who are being detained. No, let's not leave it on something so negative. Ask me something positive.
Well, I do want to ask one question. We are hoping to continue traveling to El Salvador and Guatemala and Honduras. And the question we always get as people who travel there is, how safe is it? And I'd like you to, I can stand up here and say I've been there 7 times, and ladies have been with us and teenagers have been with us, and we've never been in danger, but sometimes I get a sideways look. So, can you comment on the safety of those who come, not just us, but others?
No, you have no security risk coming to visit El Salvador. That's just the truth. It is a place, the country, the government has focused on being welcoming to tourists, and there's no doubt that as foreigners, you are not the subject. You're not the targets of being detained in the state of exception. And so there's no risk. You would be able to come to El Salvador and move around freely and meet with people with the awareness that that's not the case for many of the people that you're meeting with.
Okay, thank you.
I'll tell you a funny story. So we had a visit from the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, the board of directors. So there were actually 3 Rockefeller family members. They were on this visit. And they have been helping to fund the Victims Association of El Mozote, the massacre case. There's a lawyer who's from the community who helps people with reparations issues and helps do the organizing. And they're really the core of 40 years of struggle for justice. They're our primary allies. We're the legal representatives of them. And Bukele has focused on El Mozote because in the first weeks of his presidency, he invited the whole Victims Association, even Cristosal's lawyers, to a lunch at the president's house. And he famously promised everything to the victims: justice, truth, reparations. He said, if they ask me to declassify military archives from A to F, I'll declassify them from A to Z. And it was his famous phrase. And then when we asked the judge to declassify military archives, and the judge tried to execute a judicial warrant to declassify them, the president and the Minister of Defense ordered the soldiers to block the inspections. It was like one of the early confrontations that we've had directly with the president, and it was actually, now I'm going to go on a tangent, but Oscar Romero, he said in his last homily, he said to soldiers, he made a call to the soldiers during the armed conflict or the dirty war, or the repressive period. He said, no soldier is obligated to obey a law that's contrary to the law of God, to obey an order that's contrary to the law of God. And the judge, when he was trying to execute his judicial warrant, cited the Constitution and said to the soldiers at the gates where they were being blocked, he said, "No soldier is obligated to obey a law that's contrary to the Constitution." But anyway, so we did that, and you know, it was a public sort of public relations failure for the president, who's famous for his public relations ability. And he's since then visited El Mozote 3 times in a helicopter. He goes and he denounced Cristosal and says that the lawyers of Cristosal are just trying to get rich off of the case. I'd love to find that money. And he promised to remodel the whole village. And so what they've done is, like, the part of the reparations that the people won in the Inter-American Court case was to be able to create their memorial sites. So they created like an amphitheater and in the town square where the massacre began, and they remodeled it with a tomb and a wall with all the names so that they could have their annual commemorations. And the president ripped it all up, and he put fountains in the center of the square, and they put 2 police stations. There are 45 police that are now stationed permanently in El Mozote, a place where there's no crime. There hasn't been since the state massacred 1,000 victims. And so back to the Rockefellers, they've been supporting the Victims Association and funding that lawyer. So they wanted to go and visit El Mozote. And the week before their visit, the people had received like another visit from an international group, and the police came out and surrounded them in the town square and began to interrogate the victims and asking them what they're doing there. And they called us and said, "I don't know if we can bring the Rockefellers, so they might get, you know, the police might come again and bother them." And I said, "Great." I hope they do. I hope they arrest the Rockefeller. But when we were there, we were guiding the board, the Rockefeller board, around the different memorial sites, and the police came out. And they began to take pictures of everybody, just to intimidate. So obviously they didn't take any of the Rockefellers away. They won't take the St. Peter's Phoenixville crew away either. But there is that presence, that intimidation. I think the people on the board of Rockefeller said, "This is a police state. It's a police state." All right, how much money do you guys?
All right, we go. Thank you, Noah. So I just want to share with you very briefly a personal experience that I've had, and the reason that I and so many of those who've been in El Salvador really believe in Cristosal and do everything we can to support them. And our parish does 3 basic things in that regard. First, we pray for the safety and the well-being of the Cristosal staff and the people of El Salvador who are marginalized. Secondly, we walk in solidarity with them and the victims of those aggressions. And as you heard the bishop say, you know, God is going to ask you, were you with them? And I think to myself, have you ever been sad or lonely or sick or just down in the dumps, as they say, and your friend, some friend called you out of the blue and said, "Well, hey, how you doing? I really care about you. I love you. I want to come and see you." And how does that make you feel? You know, for me, I'm thankful for such a person, and it makes me feel loved, cared for, but most of all, it gives me hope for a better day the next day. And that's what we do in El Salvador. I'll share a real quick story. I know it's getting late, but there's one story. I can tell you 25, but I won't. I'll tell you why. And that is that we visited a group of mothers and daughters and sisters of about 15 women in El Salvador, in a community there, that had one road in and one road out, same road, in and out. They were victimized by the gangs who would extort them, abuse them, and marginalize them in any way they could to take their belongings or their values. They were also persecuted by the police, who came in and took the young men without proof. This is not just this recent, this is quite a while ago now, and put them in jail and basically cleaned out the whole village of men. So it was the brothers, sisters, the brothers, fathers, uncles, were all gone, and then the young men were taken out. So here are these 10 or 12 mothers who were sitting there, and they are totally unprotected in all sense of the word. They can't call the police. They're hopeless, really. So we sat there and we talked to them. We were not going to change their situation. We were not going to solve their problem. But what we were there to do was to be with them, as the bishop said. God's going to say, were you with them? And that's why we were there. So we went around the room, as is the custom, and each person spoke, and each person gave, relayed a worse story than the one previous. And we were all basically crying, the whole room was, and we got around to about halfway, and most of these women were in their 40s and 50s, really. But we got to a teenager who looked to be about between 14 and 17. And it was her turn to tell her story. And she got her name out, but then put her head down, put her hands over her eyes, and you could see her shoulders shaking, and the only thing we could see were the tears dripping off of her face onto her dress. And she was so forlorn that she couldn't speak. So we moved on to the next person. After that, we got into a group, small groups of 2 or 3, and heard their stories, and there's a lot of tears and a lot of hugs and a lot of comforting. And in the end, we left, and it was very frustrating, really, because, you can't really solve their problem. But what you can do is give them peace, love, and hope. And that's why we were there. And that's what we do when we go to El Salvador, and hopefully now Guatemala and Honduras. And we bring hope to people. And that's why that, to me, is the heart and soul of Cristosal, is to bring hope to people, to protect people, to improve their lives and improve the country's human rights future. So we have a 3-legged relationship here. We have prayer, which we do every Sunday. We have solidarity, and we have financial support. I myself look and see where I put my money and say, is this a good place to put my money? Is it going to be used wisely? Is it going to be used to address the issue that I care about? And I know that a lot of you, or all of you really, in this room are very generous and caring people. So I would like to just bring your attention, not that you can listen, but on your table is a donation card, and it directs you to the most convenient places to donate your money in the easiest way possible. And what we would ask you to do is, either tonight or on your way home, think about what you've heard tonight up here, and say, is this a place that I should be? Is this an organization that should I be supporting? Do they address the issues I care about? And how effectively do they address them? And I know Noah's not going to like this, and he's not one to brag, but I'm really proud of this, actually. I think it was the immortal Muhammad Ali said, it ain't bragging if you can do it. And so I want you to know that there was a gentleman in this room that was in a meeting with Vice President Harris in August as part of a panel that she is working on economic opportunity with including human rights parameters in Central America. And Noah Bullock was there in that table with the vice president. And if you can't trust him with your money, then I don't know who you can. But I'm really excited about that. I'm very proud of Noah. That's quite an accomplishment that you have been recognized by the United States government as a leader and an expert in the field. So. I want to say before I forget that we have quite a bit of food left over, so, and I'd really like to thank Gretchen and, I'd like to thank Gretchen for arranging our catering and the food and the setup tonight was just great. And Don, you did a lot.
There's take-home tubs like you get in a restaurant when you carry out. It's all lined up in the kitchen on the left side, just file through, fill it up, cover it up, take it home. I want those trays empty before the food.
All right. Lastly, I want you to know that is not a Dallas Cowboys flag over there.
Better not be.
So this is Mike Logar, by the way, if you don't know Mike Logar. Mike has been a great supporter of Cristosal over this time here. He's a longtime parishioner and a great supporter, and he has really, sparked much of our fundraising. And so, Mike, we thank you, and that's all yours.
Well, thank you, Gary. This is the interactive part of our program tonight. So everyone get ready to cheer and applaud. We're going to recognize the good works because it takes many hands to put on an event like this. So we'll start off with Ariel, our caterer, the owner and chef of Giovanni's. He's gone, but we love your food. We can taste the passion in it. You're a tremendous chef, and that was awesome. We also have some experts in parking cars. So we want to thank Kent and Leo and Christian Wegner. And by the way, they're going to go to El Salvador because I know you have a parking problem. So they will be there soon. Noah, you talked about, the need to, we have to train the next generation and the next generation after that, so we're ready. Well, I'm so proud of our youth group helpers today. Tate Wells and again, Christian and Leo Wegner, thank you for your work. The future is bright. We've got the next generation coming in for St. Peter's. So I know everyone's probably a Phillies fan. I'm a Phillies fan. I was very disappointed that they got knocked out of the playoffs. But I'm going to tell you, the next best team around is here tonight. It is the Cristosal Mission Committee. I'd like the committee to stand up. Please stand up. Please stand up. That's Gary. That's Erica. That's Cindy. That's Mona. There's Renee. Where is Jolie? Is here somewhere. And Gretchen, thank you. And Peggy Davidson, who can't meet tonight. Guys, sit down. I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to talk about you guys a little bit. So they do tonight's event. Look around. Look at the white tablecloths. Look at the flowers. Look at the food that's been organized. Look at the wine. This whole event, there's a lot of planning and details that go on. But this is just one day of the year. This is a 365-day-a-year committee. So they are always on. They have been doing this for 10 years. This is actually the 9th fundraising event we've done in 10 years. And you heard about, in 10 years we've raised $135,000. But in the last 3 years, $72,000, and 2022 was the high water mark at about $25,500. I heard 30 tonight, and then I heard the bishop jumping right on. So that sounds like that's going to be a record-breaking event. But the committee does other things about, planned trips. You heard about that. There is room on this committee. They have been working this, 10 years. So we have deep appreciation, but we want others to join. And it really is a fun committee to work on. There's a lot of love and there's a lot of pleasure as well. So thank you, committee. Father Sam, thank you for, just nurturing the ministry that you have, the ministry that and supporting Cristosal and everything we're doing. And not only are you someone that gives us spiritual leadership in the committee, but you're also hands-on. So, he is someone that does everything there is, whether it's manual, whether it's spiritual. So thank you very much for your leadership in that area. Round of applause for Father Sam. And the bishop's not here. We wanted to thank the bishop. And I don't know, any event I go to, the bishop attends. That's got to be a pretty important event. But I'll tell you what, I felt his presence here. You could really feel his presence, and it was meaningful. And it's very much appreciated. And we heard how busy the bishop's schedule is, that he took time to come here. We're very fortunate. So, Bishop, if you were here, I would thank you for blessing us with your presence. And I would also say to you, Bishop, please go out into all the parishes and talk about Cristosal. Let's spread the word of Cristosal. And the bishop is someone that can do that. So anyone that's close to the bishop, let's make sure he gets the message that the blessing he can provide is to go out and talk to all the churches about the good works. And finally, Noah. Thank you, Noah. You're a beautiful human being. You really are. We love you very much.
Do I need a haircut? Tell me the truth. Do I need a haircut?
I like the long hair. I think it makes you look very biblical and spiritual and all of those things. So please keep the long hair. And the carpentry, the whole thing is working. So Noah's a carpenter as well. So he's got a lot going on. But Noah, really, for you to come and share the good works of Cristosal. Honestly, it's sobering. It's sobering to sit and listen to, the human rights violations that are going on in the world. But it is so gratifying to hear the work and you and the organization are doing. And we very much appreciate you coming and teaching us and challenging us and motivating us. And through that, our spirituality grows, our faith grows, because we know that when we're listening to you and we're participating in the fundraising and we're participating in the trips, that we're doing what Jesus commanded us to do, which is to serve the underserved. And you very much bring us closer in that regard. And also, I think it was mentioned, you are a bit of a rock star in the, human rights world. And for you, no matter what, to take the time to come see us. It is extraordinarily impactful, extraordinarily meaningful, and we are blessed to have you. And personally, I can't tell you how excited I am every year to see you. Working in the business world, we sometimes get bogged down with what we think are, challenges and obstacles and speed bumps. And then we hear the work you're working on, and I know there's just a greater calling out there. And, it just kind of minimizes the things that we're thinking about, the problems we have. Lastly, I want to say thank you for the work you do for Cristosal. Thank you for literally the thousands of people that you help. And I have an ask, and the ask is, it's a simple one, that including Cristosal in your prayer, and it's a prayer that goes like this: Father, bring someone new into my life that I can share the good works of Cristosal. And I believe if you pray that simple prayer, we will be a force magnifier for good in the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate your presence, and you always energize us, and we keep our commitment and we grow our commitment. So thank you, Noah, and thanks everyone for coming. Take care.